Hi, I'm Casey Frashante, professional astrologer. Today I thought I'd give a presentation on the synastry between one of the most iconic couples of my generation, which is Ariana Grande and Pete Davidson. We'll take a look at their natal charts each separately because that's important to get an understanding of their character and how they relate to others. And then we'll look at the actual synastry between them, so chart overlays and the aspects between their planets. And then we'll also take a look at their composite chart. And I also wanted to mention something else, but I think I'll get to that later in the video. I have to just go and grab this book so I don't forget to discuss that part of things. So let's go straight into Ariana's chart. Um, all right. So here's her chart. And basically, I'm not going to go through every little thing about her chart and her personality. I'm primarily going to focus on her ascendant descendant axis because that is our relationship axis. I'll also focus on any meaningful aspects, like aspects to her chart ruler. Venus, obviously, Venus rules love and relationship for everyone. Her moon and anything she's kind of lacking in her chart, and I'll do the same for Pete as well. So we can see that she's a Capricorn rising. Capricorn risings a lot of the time. They get into relationships that involve some kind of not power imbalance, but like a status imbalance, dating up or down, that kind of thing. But because she is a Capricorn rising, these are the people that are going to want to, rise through the ranks. So they're probably going to be the top dog in their relationship. So with her, I think she's dating down. She has Uranus and Neptune conjunct the ascendant, which is interesting. Neptune conjunct the ascendant is someone that's going to get lost in relationships that could because they don't really know who they are in general. And Uranus conjunct the ascendant kind of gives this edge of like whirlwind romance with Neptune there as well. It's like this kind of very epic, cinematic love life, unorthodox types of relationships. So when I said dating up and dating down, it's kind of like her dating down, and I know she's in a relationship with some guy now, like a co-star who was kind of like a nobody. I know Pete was he was doing something with like SNL, mostly a nobody, and then kind of became famous through his relationship with Ariana. The guy she's dating now is like married to his wife, and Ariana was like a homewrecker, and she has a habit of doing these types of things. That is Uranus on the ascendant. These people tend to be unlikable a lot of the time because there's something kind of off about them. And I'm not just saying if you have Uranus on the ascendant, this is you. It's just there's something about you people tend to not like, and it could be because you're reflecting something societally back to them that they don't want to acknowledge, whatever. But Uranus there can give the quality of sudden beginnings and endings to relationships. Then she also has Mercury in Cancer conjunct the descendant. And this to me just kind of it feels like she needs to be able to emotionally vibe with the partner, but these are in opposition. So she's got an opposition on her ascendant descendant axis. And I was gonna say, like, this kind of gives the impression that it's blowing hot and cold, but it's not hot and cold. It's like wet and dry. Tears, like toddler temper tantrum, and then the cold shoulder. And I can't help but think that is some kind of pattern in her relationship with the roles probably reversing every now and then. Sometimes she's the needy child, and other times she's a very austere kind of parent. Um, and that is a theme throughout all of her relationships. Can, be corroborated by the fact she has a Libra moon conjunct Jupiter. Libra moons are relationship orientated anyways. This is square her sun in Cancer, which can indicate a very needy type of personality. Um, Her integrity, self-expression is often molded by her relationships and the person she's in a relationship with. Yielding to relationships, codependent, gets a lot of validation from the partner and self-aggrandizement from her relationships. If we're talking about, Jupiter squaring the sun specifically, and then the Cancer Libra axis is just kind of needy. She's got her chart ruler Saturn opposite Mars in Virgo, chart ruler in Pisces. I don't look at outer sign aspects. And Saturn Mars types tend to be, they tend to carry a lot of frustration with it being an opposition. Again, it's worked out through relationships. This isn't something she necessarily battles within herself. It manifests through her relationships with others, potentially a kind of fear of confrontation and fighting based on the axis that it's in, the Pisces Virgo axis. It's like fear of fighting because of what might spiral because of it. Like the relationship might spiral out of control, or she might spiral out of control. Potentially the partner spirals out of control, kind of like a walking on eggshells type of energy. And this is another testimony to me about some kind of like status imbalance in relationships, just based on the Pisces Virgo axis alone. One is all about order, the other is all about chaos. And then she also has Venus opposite Pluto natally. And this just means she attracts obsessive, intense relationships. She can be the intense, obsessed one, but Uranus conjunct the ascendant, again, this is probably like a split in her personality. Sometimes she's um, can be cold and just end relationships. Venus opposite Pluto was more like a clingy. That would tie more into the Libra moon that I was talking about, squaring the Cancer sun. But Venus opposite Pluto in general attracts these types of intense, potentially violent relationships. Venus Pluto types are black holes. I have this type as well. I can talk as much shit about it as I want. Black holes, no matter how much love, attention, material shit you give her, with Venus being in Taurus, no matter how comfortable you make her, Venus in the fourth house, it's never going to be enough. You can love these people to death and it's still not going to be enough. So here we have this person. Oh, she also has three oppositions. I mentioned them. Opposition, people with a lot of oppositions in their chart tend to be relationship orientated, just because these are relationship aspects. Three oppositions, three separate oppositions is like a pretty big deal. I don't see more than two typically in someone's chart. So when I see three and a Libra moon and Venus opposite Pluto, even Neptune conjunct the ascendant, this is kind of like, yeah, this is someone that's needy, but then we also have Uranus there, which is kind of like, why is she constantly cutting people off? But this Uranus is trining her Venus. So even in positive aspects, Venus Uranus can be hyper independent and only caring about their own needs, because they're able to detach from the relationship and say, this is done, I'm over it, it's not serving me anymore. So the Venus opposite Pluto thing makes me think potentially the partners are the ones clinging to her, but it can change depending on the relationship and the synastry going on. Anyways, she also doesn't have any fire in her chart, which tells me, again, this Libra moon conjunct Jupiter, squaring her Cancer sun. It's this impression that she doesn't have any real belief in herself, especially with the Saturn opposite Mars as well. There's no real belief in herself. Fire in a birth chart is that sense that anything is possible and I can do anything. I get the feeling she feels kind of downtrodden and like she's useless and can't do anything. Saturn opposite Mars as well. That can be someone that gives too much in relationships, doing too much to prove something to the partner. That I think is everything about her covered regarding her ability to relate. If we move on to Pete's chart, as you can see, he's got this loaded sixth house, totally different compared to Ariana's chart, which is kind of like a splash pattern. Anyways, he's a Gemini rising. So he has this bubbly, curious, playful approach to the world and his relationships. Gemini rising types can get along with anyone. They're so curious. They want to speak to everyone and learn everything they can about them. They can strike up a conversation with anyone, and they're very, friendly. He has his chart ruler in Scorpio, and it is conjunct the ruler of his seventh house, which is Jupiter. I think he's a relationship guy. People with the ruler of their first and seventh in aspect, they tend to be the types of people that are always in a relationship. I don't want to say they can't be alone, but with this being in Scorpio, which can be a very codependent sign as well, I wonder if there's something like that going on with him. He feels a compulsive need to get into relationships because he can't be alone. He's not comfortable being alone. But also just because he is so communicative with the Gemini rising, and that is conjunct the ruler of his seventh house, I get the feeling like he kind of just falls into relationships. Like he's just kind of blabbing and chatting away, and then before he knows it, he's like in a relationship with that person. I don't think he's a situationship type or like a fuckboy type because I think he's just with all the Scorpio planets, I think he's a bit too intense for that. And he's got Mars conjunct the Descendant as well. Mars in Sagittarius, he doesn't think before leaping into relationships. I get the impression of he's like, oh, this is happening. Mars conjunct the Descendant as well. Maybe the partner is more assertive than him. The partner is more is going to be more of a dominant type. Gemini rising, all the Scorpio stuff. I feel like, yeah, he's just kind of, and Mars in Sagittarius as well. He's kind of just having fun, living his life, and I'm assuming he's straight, and all the women are kind of seeing that playful side of him and thinking that means something special, and they're pursuing him. I don't actually get the impression he's that much of a pursuer. I think he just kind of ends up in these relationships with these women. He's going along for the ride, basically, and ends up in these relationships. I also think because of all these Scorpio planets and this loaded sixth house, he's got a singleton in Aquarius being Saturn. This is the only planet he has in an air sign, and this is square his sun and his Pluto, which are conjunct. I get the feeling like he deals with so much shit in his own life, and he's isolated by his intellect with that Saturn in Aquarius, isolated by his intellect, experiences so much bullshit throughout his life, through his life experience, that he doesn't really feel the need to try when it comes to relationships. He's not trying to find a girlfriend. He's not trying to settle down. He is just that Sag Mars thing, the Gemini rising thing. He's just kind of being himself, living his life, and women are attracted to him because of the fact he doesn't really not give a shit about them, but he's just kind of like, yeah, whatever. He also doesn't have any oppositions in his chart. These people aren't relationship orientated. They don't see themselves through relationships. They're more independent. He also doesn't have any air apart from that Saturn in Aquarius. People lacking air, again, they're not socially inclined. I get the feeling he's just a guy. Positive and negative things about him, and women are attracted to him because of the fact he just doesn't care about pursuing them. Does that make sense? So when we can, compare Ariana's personality and her chart to Pete's chart, they're very different. They have different approaches to relationships and different characters in general. And if we look at their synastry, which is like the chart overlay and stuff, this is probably what you've been waiting for. We can do that. All right. This is synastry grid. I know it's kind of difficult to get your like eyes adjusted to it, but I'll annotate everything. One of the most positive things about their relationship, I think, was that they had a double whammy of Jupiter Mars, both sextiles. Jupiter Mars in synastry basically means, especially if it's a double whammies dominate the relationship. These are the dominant themes in the relationship. They liked doing stuff together, horsing around. Pete has that Mars in Sagittarius, anyways. So he's kind of like that. He's geared that way, anyways. If you remember, Ariana has Saturn opposite her Mars. So this relationship felt kind of like freeing for her. She had a lot of fun in this relationship because she doesn't actually have that much fun in her own life, I don't think. So she got that Saturn Mars thing she had going on got kind of alleviated in this relationship, which is nice, doing things with your it can be like inflated sexual urges towards the partner as well, which was probably happening with them. Obviously, their relationship lasted 5 months, so I don't really know if they ever got out of that honeymoon phase, but just generally horsing around and doing things together, they had fun. They also have their Mars and Moon in positive aspect to each other. So her Mars was trining his Moon and his Mars was sextile her Moon. This just kind of tells me that their feelings were aroused by each other. They caught feelings, their heart was racing around each other, and they let each other in emotionally. And they didn't feel like intruded upon by the other person. It was kind of sweet in that they both showed their cards to the other person, I guess. Ariana's sun is opposite Pete's moon, and this is occurring across the Cancer Capricorn axis. I think this is why they got engaged so quickly. I think they got engaged after a couple months, if not a month or a couple weeks, I'm not really sure. They made each other feel complete. Cancer Capricorn axis, that is the axis of like maybe we should get married. Again, the sun and the moon is kind of that energy, anyways. So it's kind of double down in the Cancer Capricorn axis. Maybe we should get married. Maybe we should have a family. Very bonded. It brought out the traditional gender roles in each other. Again, like they were kind of young. I don't think either of them had been engaged beforehand. Maybe neither of them had even had like a serious enough relationship to consider marriage at that point. And then here they were falling into these very traditional gender roles of I'm a man and you're a woman, let's get married and start a family. Also, Ariana's Saturn was trine Pete's Jupiter, which isn't a huge deal in synastry, but when you consider Saturn is Ariana's chart ruler, Jupiter is the ruler of Pete's seventh house. When the ruler of one partner's first house and the ruler of another partner's seventh house are making contact in synastry, this kind of gives longevity potential to the relationship. It's what you'd want to see in synastry for long-term potential. Saturn, Jupiter contacts in synastry are also good for friendship ties. They let each other grow. Her Saturn in Pisces, trining his Jupiter in Scorpio, this gives me the impression that there was this sense of ultimate forgiveness for them. I don't think there's really any hard feelings there. Maybe with Ariana, I'll get into that in a minute. But generally, it was like they experience this together and they forgive each other for everything that kind of went wrong, or they're very grateful for the emotional nourishment they got and memories they got from this relationship. And I say Ariana maybe might have some hard feelings because her Venus is opposite his sun, and his Venus is trining her sun. So her Venus in Taurus opposite his Scorpio sun. Again, opposition is a hard aspect. It's like, and Taurus Scorpio axis, she felt very possessive of him. His Venus in Scorpio trining her Cancer sun. It's like he appreciated her and felt very protective of her, being, the soft aspect. It was like lighter for him. For her, it felt more intense and possessive. That's kind of the general, like, positive-ish stuff about the chart. They do have each other's Mars in square, which I don't love, but it's also not a deal breaker. It just means there was some kind of antagonism, pushing each other's buttons, not doing things in the same way. Ariana has Mars in Virgo. She was more careful about things. She also has that Saturn Mars opposition, more cautious in general. He has his Mars in Sagittarius, careless, haphazard. She probably felt a little bit unsafe around him, like getting caught in some kind of crossfire, or like he was going to do something to put her in danger through his own negligence, not necessarily through any malice. And he probably thought she was too uptight. Her Saturn is also squaring his Mars, which is restraining that Sagittarius need for freedom. So he felt frustrated by this. Potentially there was sexual withholding in their relationship eventually as well. Again, like 5 months in, probably still in the honeymoon phase, so who knows. But he felt restrained in this relationship. Even no matter how much they liked each other, there was something about it that felt like he was sacrificing a part of himself to be in this relationship. And his Saturn squares her Venus. So if you remember, she has that Venus Pluto opposition in her natal chart. Can't be loved enough. It literally a black hole, huge famous celebrity, has all the money in the world in this relationship, and in my opinion, it still wasn't enough for her. And with his Saturn squaring her Venus, it starved that her Venus even more. She felt starved for affection as it is, or again, not even starved for affection, just that black hole of like, I need more love. And he was already starving her of that affection. I think that could have caused a problem. And finally, in their synastry, they had their moon squaring each other's moons, which I don't actually mind. I think sun square sun is more of a problem, but moon square moon, there can be some issues there. I don't hate it in their synastry though. They're both moon Jupiter people. Ariana has the conjunction. Pete had the sextile. They're both of their moons are like have connections to Saturn based on their signs. Pete has his moon in Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. Ariana's moon is in Libra, which Saturn is exalted in. So to me, there is some kind of cohesion with their suns, despite them being in square. I think that maybe Ariana thought Pete was a little bit too emotionally closed off, and maybe Pete thought that Ariana was too sensitive and dependent on other people's opinion of her. And so they were kind of going in different directions in that way. But generally, their synastry is fine. They don't have a Venus Mars connection, which is what I would primarily look for in any kind of intimate relationship. Um, they have the Sun Moon thing, which is nice. The ruler of her first house was in aspect to his ruler of his seventh house. Let's just move on to the composite chart now. And the composite chart is basically just the energetic imprint or snapshot of the relationship. I have it here somewhere. Oh no, this is in the way. Here we go. All right. So you read a composite chart like a natal chart. That's how I do it anyways. I read it like a natal chart and then I look for any connections between the composite chart and their natal charts. The thing that stands out to me the most is that this is a 0 degree Aries rising for their composite chart. It just feels very innocent to me. There was nothing orchestrated about this relationship, in my opinion. 0 degree Aries is like the freshest start, the newest start, the blankest slate. It just feels very innocent. Um, this chart also has low fire. The only planet it has in fire would be this Venus in Leo. And both of them have low fire anyway. So again, this wasn't a super like inspirational relationship. It was just based on other things. And it wasn't also a super active relationship. They were doing stuff together, but it wasn't always so public or intense. Um, anyways, what else did I want to discuss about this? The descendant would be conjunct Ariana's moon Jupiter conjunction in her natal chart. So she felt very emotionally dependent on this relationship. The composite moon is conjunct Pete's sun. I think he got a lot of emotional fulfillment from the relationship, whereas Ariana felt emotionally dependent on it. This Venus is conjunct Pete's fourth house, so he felt very comfortable in this relationship. Pete's fourth house, and then it's squaring Ariana's Mars. This Venus was squaring Ariana's Mars. I mean Venus. So, and in a lot of ways, I think this relationship didn't like ruin her reputation because I think she got more fame from it, but it painted her in a certain light that I feel like wasn't actually indicative of who she was. And I hear phrases when I look at astrology, and it's not like for every little aspect, but something will just like come to me. The composite Venus in Leo squaring her Venus in Taurus, I heard the phrase, you can't beat it, meaning that I feel like this kind of peaked for her. Her love life kind of peaked with this relationship, and I don't think really she's ever going to be in such a high profile relationship going forward or such a publicly meaningful relationship going forward. I talk about in one of my previous videos how I evaluate a chart, and this chart is lacking any planets in personal signs and personal houses. So Aries to Cancer, the signs and the houses themselves, 1 to 4, are empty. This relationship kind of didn't have anything to do with them. It was kind of a cultural moment, flash in the pan, and that's kind of all I have to say about no oppositions as well. I don't think they were learning that much about themselves through this relationship. It probably felt more like the only thing that comes to mind is like a flash in the pan cultural moment, and that's it. Again, the relationship lasted 5 months. I'm sure they felt very in love. I don't think there was actually any kind of longevity potential here. Maybe in the future when other things line up, but it feels like a cultural moment, and that's it. And so, what I wanted to talk about regarding this book, it's called When Stars Collide by Paul Westron. It's so convoluted for me to be able to explain it. Basically, he talks about in this book, the author talks about how no relationship is going to come into formulation or formate if one person's natal chart isn't connected to the progress chart of the other person, or if their progress chart isn't connecting to the other person's progress chart. And I have a visual aid for this, so maybe I'll just, share my screen now. So I am a numbers autistic. This is kind of my thing. If you're not a numbers autistic, you can probably click off the video now. I've mentioned everything I need to mention about their general synastry and personality and whatnot. Okay, so the way I do this is I write down, I do this in just like a matrix. You can do this manually as well. You want to look at connections between the natal Sun, Venus, or Mars to the other person's progressed Sun, Venus, or Mars. Ariana's progressed Sun is at basically 5 degrees of Cancer. Her Venus, 20 degrees of Taurus. Her natal Mars, 2 degrees of Virgo. You don't want to look at natal to natal. And this is a setup that I do because I can go natal to progress, and then progress to progress. But you don't want to look at natal to natal. I said it was convoluted and, complicated. So these are Ariana's natal, Pete's natal. We're not looking at natal to natal. Ignore them for now. You're going to want to look at natal to progressed and natal to progressed. There's no connection between their natal chart to their progressed chart. You're going to use a 2-degree orb to make aspects only. 5 degrees of Cancer to 20 or 19 degrees of Sag, not an aspect. Cancer, 10 Sag, not an aspect. Cancer, 23 Sag, no aspect. 20 Taurus, 20 Sag, no aspect. Quincunx, like I said, Tomei aspects, but you can make an exception for the quincunx, and maybe that plays into them being like two ships passing in the night. Basically, that's how I interpret the quincunx aspect, just like two ships passing in the night. So potentially a quincunx there. 20 Taurus, 10 Sag, no aspect. 20 Taurus, 23 Sag, out of orb. Like you'd think quincunx, but 2-degree orb. And you might even want to make it even a tighter orb for the quincunx, but 2-degree orb, no aspect. And then if we just look at Pete's natal to Ariana's progressed, 24 Scorpio to 29 Cancer. You'd think a trine, it's out of aspect. You also might want to consider that Ariana's sun sign, progressed sun, was just about to change into Leo in about a year's time. Does that sound like someone that's going to be getting into a long-term relationship? Not really, but yeah, maybe if they got married really quickly, it would make sense. But you'd think someone's sun sign, changing sign, they're in this new relationship. It just doesn't seem like that's an indication that they were going to stay together. So Scorpio to Cancer, out of orb, that ship sailed. If they had met a couple years earlier, maybe they would have stayed together, but they didn't, and they didn't. So Scorpio, 24 Scorpio to Gemini, no aspect. 24 Scorpio to 16 Virgo, no aspect, out of orb. 10 Scorpio, 29 Cancer, no aspect. No aspect, uh, no aspect. And then 5 degrees of Sag, no aspect, no aspect, no aspect. So all we have is potentially that quincunx, but again, emphasis on Tomaic aspects. But you can also look at the progressed to the progressed. Sag to Cancer, no aspect. Sag to Gemini, opposition. Venus, her progressed Venus opposite his progressed Sun. Again, I put more emphasis on the natal to progressed, but even the progressed to the progressed, and it being the opposition, and it being between Gemini and Sag, which is kind of flighty anyways. It again, this if anything is giving more testimony to this relationship being a flash in the pan. Um, so progressed, there's that opposition there. This would have been moving into orb as well, but again, same axis, more flash in the pan. Um, where was I? And then almost 17 degrees of Virgo to Sag. Potentially a square is out of orb. I don't know the planetary speed in their progressions. If one was about to go retrograde, I don't know. Potentially a square out of orb though, but again, progressed to progressed Mars squaring someone's progressed Sun in mutable signs. It's not giving longevity to me. And then Sag Virgo out of orb, Sag Virgo out of orb. That's basically what I wanted to discuss with their how would I even describe it? The doorway potential for them even meeting. Them even meeting feels like a rare what's it called? Not like a rare sighting, but it was like a shiny Pokemon. It was kind of the Quincunx, yeah. It was just again, like they have some synastry that is kind of like, yeah, okay, I can see why they were together. Their personalities and the way they relate to each other. I think there was kind of a mismatch there, again, with Ariana's kind of bullshit in her chart with the Uranus conjunct the ascendant, the Venus opposite Pluto, and then, Pete kind of being a complicated guy and not super interested in not just her, but like interested in giving attention to other people and women. It was just kind of like. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. See you in my next video. Bye.